Hi everyone, welcome to your Pathway to Employment. Are you seeking a job? I know a lot of people are right now, and it's a tough market out there. There are a lot of people looking for jobs and maybe not even as many jobs available, especially in the field that you're trying to get the job in. So I'm here to help. I'm an HR professional with 30 plus years experience, including a lot of recruiting based experience. And I am doing this series of videos on my channel to help those who are seeking employment get it through this pathway to employment and the 5 main steps. So each video focuses on one step, and then I review some from the previous steps as well. So we've talked about resumes in the first video. We talked about cover letters in the second video, and also marketing yourself. It's really important. You have to be your best spokesperson. I remember the old Star Search TV show, they had the spokesmodel category. Well, you don't have to be a model, but you do have to be a spokesperson. And so you have to know how to sell yourself. And one way to do that is to practice ahead. So let's talk a little bit about that. We have what's called stories about ourselves and the things that we do and have qualifications in that maybe others don't, the average person doesn't. So you have to know your strengths and be able to present them effectively in a short period of time. One thing you don't want to do in an interview is go on and on and on a particular question or two. Sometimes when I'm interviewing people, and I interview people quite often in my job, I have people who just won't stop talking so that I could ask my other questions. So don't do that. Don't let yourself ramble on and on. It's really not a good way to do an interview, and it doesn't make the interviewer feel really good about you sometimes. It depends on what you're saying, but so make sure that you know how to sell yourself, but be concise, and only focus on the answer to that question. Also, make sure you have questions that you want to ask, and a lot of times, like, I give people a chance at the end of the interview to ask questions, but I tell them as we're going through the interview, if something makes sense to ask, please feel free to ask it then. Most people, by the way, do a really good job of this, and also they don't ramble on. But for those who do, please watch that, because that is a real problem if you don't get all your questions in, or at least most of them as an interviewer. Now, I've mentioned Passport to Employment, who helped me when I was 6 years ago looking for a job and new to the job market after 16 years of being employed at my same employer. It was such a different world, and I had to learn, and I give them credit. They are the ones who taught me some of these methods that I'm sharing with you, but also a lot of it's just from my 30 plus years of experience. So I'm merging the two. Now, they have what's called Star Stories, or Snapshots of Your Success. You can call it whatever you want. What I say is, again, knowing how to sell your qualifications. So what you want to come up with is 6 to 8 things that you know how to do or you have accomplished in your career that is truly an achievement you want to share. And you can have them in your head in concise ways. So you have to practice some of this. When you know you're going to have a job in a certain type of area, then what you do is you take the top 15, 20 questions that you might get in that and know what you're going to say. Have an answer prepared. Now, you don't want to sound practiced. I don't mean to make it sound like that. But you just want to make it sound conversational. And I know sometimes that could be difficult to do both. But practice with, a spouse, a partner, a friend, or somebody you're with, and let them give you tips. Let them ask you questions. I did this with a professional person that I was worked with, not a colleague, but from another company. And she actually did a mock interview. We recommend that, especially if you're new to the job market like I was and had not been on the other side of the interview table for a while, then practice. So, for instance, here are some of the most common questions that you might be asked. First of all, the simple one, tell me about yourself. That's where your 30-second elevator speech that we talked about in the last video helps you out. And if you didn't watch that, go back and watch it, please. You can watch these in any order, but it's going to be really important that you see all 5 of these videos. So tell me about yourself. And here's the advice of Passport to Employment. Instead of giving a chronological work history, don't do that, and don't go totally off boat and talk just about your personal life. You can add some about your personal life, but make sure you stay positive and focus on what you have done, what you have accomplished. This is, again, your personal marketing statement. If they happen to, and they probably won't, but if they ask about your previous manager, don't trash that person. Don't badmouth them. Just stay positive and focus, and say some good things about them. What you learned, what you did appreciate about them. There's usually something you can come up with. But that is not a question that I think is going to come up. What these are, they're saying these are the toughest questions to answer sometimes. Why do you want to work in this industry? Like for me in HR can be in any industry. So if they say, well, why do you want to be in the automotive industry? To me, I'd have to turn that back around and say, because HR could be in any industry and I want to learn about the automotive industry. Actually, I have worked for a brief time at that temporary job 6.5 years ago at an automotive plant that didn't make the vehicles, they made parts. So I've worked some in that. But, that's what you want to say is, I want to learn more about this industry. I've always been interested in it, or something like that. Why are you leaving your current role? Now, this will almost always come up. And usually, in my case, I ask this during the phone interview part, before they're in person, possibly. And so what you want to say is whatever's true, first of all, that doesn't sound negative. So for me, I would have said, I'm looking for a new opportunity to grow while staying in HR and learn something new, have a new challenge. In my case, I went from an HR group of 3 to an HR team of 1. So I was now the person on my own, and I got to build a brand new HR department actually from the ground up, and that's always a good thing, to have a new experience. Also, I went from for-profit to non-for-profit. So depending on the job and the company you're talking to, the person whose company it is, well, you want to customize your answer to that. The word customization could be the theme for this whole series because it's so important. You can't have a generic resume and succeed usually. Same thing with the cover letter, and certainly not with the interviewing. You can have some answers are the same, like why you wanted to leave and things like that. Those don't necessarily have to change. But you need to know that, if I'm talking to like in my case, it was all kinds of industries, then I need to be have that in mind and customize my answers to an extent. As far as the salary, if you can avoid it, don't give an exact number. They ask about a salary, maybe have a range, or tell them that you're willing to hear from them what the range is, focusing on reiterating your commitment to the job and the company. You can talk about job pay later. That's not something you really talk about, I hope, in an interview. It depends who you're interviewing with. When you're interviewing with the HR people, I would hope they would know not to ask certain things. However, when you're talking to someone else from another area, let's say, in the company, they could say something that's not quite maybe what they should. Let's hope not. They might ask, why should I hire you? So you have to have the reasons in your mind why you should be hired above anyone else. Why are you the best person for the job? Often comes up. And that's what you also need to know. So make sure you have these answers in your mind. When you do a marketing profile of yourself, and you can do that template that I showed you last time. But there's also something like this, where you simply list who are you? Like, what do you bring to it? It's not who you literally are, but what do you bring to it? How do I add value? Your target roles, what you provide. So for me, for instance, at the time, 20 plus years of experience of HR and all that comes with it. Stability and flexibility, leadership knowledge, things you've done. I've saved my company more than $20,000 by switching companies of one of our vendors. I improved processes and procedures for efficiency and results. And I revamped our training and onboarding program for new and existing employees. So, you have to have some of this in your mind to be able to answer these tough questions. Also, a couple other more general tips for interviewing that I want to mention is, you might be nervous, but try to control that. Breathe, do your breathing before you go in, and make sure that they are not there to make you uncomfortable. They're there to find someone to fill that job. And so they want you to succeed. So know that. I think also try to be as clear as possible with your answers. And like I said, as direct and concise. Now, I'm not talking about, 5 words or less, you got to be done. No, I don't mean that at all. Because you can say a lot in a minute or two. So just keep that in mind. Also, be organized in how you're answering things. Like I said earlier, some people jump around and ramble and add things that aren't relevant. Please don't put in those things that are not relevant to the question that was asked, because sometimes what happens is people do that and then they forget what the question was and they have to ask. And I'm not going to be hurt that I have to repeat the question, don't get me wrong. But I don't want people to do that to themselves because it makes them feel kind of frazzled. Make sure that you have your references with you so that you can provide those. But you should give them a packet when you come in or at the end, whenever it comes up. Like, here's another copy of my resume, my references, my cover letter. Or if they have the resume and cover letter, maybe just the references and a copy of your LinkedIn, which you should have a LinkedIn profile, as I said, when you are looking for a job. And also, at times you're going to have a little business card. There's a company called Vistaprint that you can order a business card through. I did that towards the end of my job search, right before I got the 5 offers I ended up getting, over a few weeks, And it was nice to go into to interviews and hand out your business card. So it's a business card of you as a candidate, not you in a job, obviously, because you're seeking a job. So just know that there are ways to market yourself, and you have to be, as I said, the person who is your own spokesman. You have to tell them why you're the best person for the job and how that you are going to help them. And if you cannot do that effectively, then they're not going to probably hire you. So have examples to offer. Be as honest as possible and as open, and be willing to share about your past work. And there are sometimes we deal with things that are kind of touchy. Like in my case, I was leaving a job where the manager was really not a good manager, and that is one of the reasons I had left my job. It was a mutual agreement, but I had to really think about how to phrase that. And, I think a couple of the things that I didn't get a job offer, or companies that didn't offer me a job, was partially because I had trouble explaining why I left my job. When you're still at a job and you are looking, then you are going to have a much easier time of it. Because you can say, well, whatever the reason is, I'm looking for a chance to grow, I feel stagnant, and I've learned a lot, but I need a new, opportunity for some other challenges. And then, in my case, since I had left the job, and again, it was a mutual agreement, and I had a severance agreement that allowed me to have a period of time to look without having to worry about the financial end of it, which is so blessed, by the way, when you can say that. But, then it becomes harder to explain, well, why did you leave? You don't want to badmouth your manager, as I said. So what I was saying was the things about wanting a new challenge. Having been there 16 years, I was a little bit burnt out, but I learned so much and I had a great opportunity that now I'm ready to do something else at the next level. So, something like that. You have to think about it for yourself and what makes the most sense. But keep in mind these tips I've given you about interviewing. We'll talk some more about interviewing in the next video because it's that important. We'll also add in what to do after the interview. There are some important steps. And, what about if you get the job offer? How to negotiate, possibly. You may not need to negotiate, but if you do, what's the proper way to do that? So, as someone with those experiences, I want to share them with you, and I hope this has been beneficial. But for now, if you like this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and feel free to share this video as well. And I'll see you next time on Pathway to Employment. Bye.